Over the last couple of weeks, given some of the videos I've posted, people have been asking what gear do they need if they want to start looking at getting into large format photography. So this morning, we're going to take a brief look at some of the gear you might want to look at if you want to step up from 35mm or medium format into the big time. So let's have a look at that now. Now, like anything else worth doing, you want to start with a strong base. Let's start with the tripod. So the tripod I use is the Benro Mac 3, and that's just because it's a very strong, quite heavy, and a low-cost option. I do have other tripods in Australia, like the Manfrotto Bogan tripod, studio tripod, which works extremely well. But I purchased this a few years ago because it is a really nice, strong option and relatively lightweight as well. So so a nice strong tripod, and as you can see, you can get some reasonably good height out of it as well. So there's our base. Now, for those that have a keen eye, would have noticed that the tripod head on top of the camera wasn't actually a Benro tripod head. So this one here is a Manfrotto head. As you can see, it's a three-way system. Works extremely well, has a spirit level built in here, although I very rarely use that. I've got my own spirit levels that I use, but this is a really nice option, really sturdy, nice and large, easy to kind of manipulate rather than having a smaller mechanism on the head here. So I really like this one. You can just screw tripod heads off and then attach different ones. So find one you like, find one you're comfortable with and you can work quickly with. Given large format photography is a little bit more slower and considered, getting a system that works quickly otherwise is extremely important. So now we've got the tripod set up, so nice strong base. We can have a look at setting up cameras. So I've got the Shen Hao 4.5 with me. This is a field camera, really nice and sturdy, made of wood with some metal accents as well. So really nice, solid option, especially if you're out taking landscapes. He's got a good lot of movement and a very versatile system. And I'll go into a little bit more about the different types of cameras in a separate video. But you're going to have to, if you want to get into 4.5 photography, you're going to need to pick yourself up a large format camera. So let me get this set up and then we'll talk through what else you need to get started. Okay, so we got the tripod and the camera set up now, but these two aren't going to be doing much without a lens. So I've been using predominantly the Rodenstock Sironar-N, which is a fantastic lens, 180mm. So what that is 180mm in 35mm terms. So if you're using a mirrorless camera or a DSLR, which is 35mm full frame, this would be the equivalent of about a 60mm lens on that system. And this is for 4.5, so a smaller large format system. If you're using 8x10, then you would multiply whatever 35mm lenses you use by 6, or take the 8x10 lens and divide it by 6, and you'll get a rough calculation. And then we're just popping this lens into the front board there, and these just slide down. And we're inside, just making sure everything's locked. And just remember, there are a huge amount of large format lenses available. I'm currently using Rodenstock, but I've also got Nikon lenses, Fujinon lenses, which are made by Fujifilm. There's also Carl Zeiss lenses. There's just a huge amount of large format lenses to play with. And in a video in the future, we'll look at coatings and what makes a large format lens worth looking at and a good option. But at the moment, I'm using Nikon and also the Rodenstock lenses. In order to focus one of these cameras, you don't have a viewfinder like a digital camera or even a 35mm camera. What you'll need to do is focus on the screen on the back here, called a ground glass screen. So in order to do that, because it is quite bright outside, you won't be able to see the image that's being projected. So in order to see that, you need one of these. It's like a dark cloth. And in order to use it, you throw it over your head like this, and then you jump underneath the camera like that. And all this is doing is blocking out any unwanted light, so you can see the back screen, and it just cuts out any of that light, so you can actually see what you're doing and refine the focus while you're under there. And something handy to note is most of the dark cloths have some Velcro on the bottom corners here. So when you throw it over the camera, you can connect them underneath the camera here, and it'll actually create like a light seal. So you don't actually need to hold it. So now you've got your hands free to manipulate the camera movements, like so. If you're gonna buy one, make sure you get one with some Velcro tabs, or get somebody to sew some on for you. And while you're focusing underneath your dark cloth, you might find that you're still having trouble seeing all those micro details and making sure what you're looking to capture is in focus, especially if you're close to the subject and the depth of field is really small. So what I usually use is one of these. It's called a loop. This is a 7x. It's probably a little bit too much, to be honest. But what you're using this for is it magnifies what's on the back of the screen. So you just place it close to the screen here. You don't really need to touch it, and you look through it, and you can actually see the image projected a little bit larger. And while you're looking at it under the dark cloth, you can just refine the focus just a touch to make sure it's actually looking sharp. Because the last thing you want is to take a photo, go to all the trouble of setting this up, and have that focus just out either side. So using one of these ensures that that won't happen. So for about $10, it's a worthy investment. Okay, so you got your gear set up, you found a scene, you're now in focus, so you're halfway there. What you might need now is something to meter the scene to make sure that your exposure that you've got dialed in on the camera is correct. So I use the Minolta Spot Meter F. This is an older spot meter, so you put your eye into the viewfinder here, and it takes a reading of a very small amount of the scene. So you might take one of the sky, the midground and the foreground, and make sure you can balance the exposures enough so it doesn't over or underexpose in any area. But if you didn't want to invest in one of these, everybody's got one of these in their pockets, so a phone. So just download a light meter app and just use one of those. So they work extremely well. They give you a good reading of the whole scene, and I've never really had any issues with the exposure reading from these, and they have got me out of a lot of trouble in the past. So if you didn't want to go for one of these, then this is your next best option. Alrighty, so we're all set up now, but we won't be able to get too much further without actually loading some film into the camera. And if you're using 4x5, which is what I generally use, you know, the film holders like these called double darks are a great option. And what these are is they have a sheet of film in the front here, which is light sealed using one of these, and then one in the back. So you put it in the camera, exposed for this side by pulling it up and taking the photo, putting it back in, and then swapping it over, taking it out, taking another photo, and then putting that back in, and then that is now finished, and then you move on to your next holder if you have one. If not, you get your dark bag out and you change the film out. So so that's a good option for 4.5. If you're using an 8x10 camera, you just get the larger 8x10 holders, but there are some other options, so let's have a look at those now. Okay, so some of the other alternatives, if you didn't want to use 4.5 film, you can use backs like this, and I just did a video about this recently. This takes medium format film and does a negative that's 6 centimeters high and about 12 centimeters long, so a nice panorama. So 6 shots per medium format roll, and it's got a nice little wind on the back here. So you use it very similar to how you'd use a regular camera, and this just slots in the back of the camera like so. So a nice option if you didn't want to shoot 4.5 film, depending on what those reasons might be. So I'll be using this a hell of a lot, you know, moving forward, just because of the cost of film is getting so expensive. You get more shots a roll than just using one sheet of film, and I do like the panoramic aspect ratio. Depending on what decision you made about which holder you'd go for, whether it's a 4x5 cut sheet holder or whether it's a rollback medium format holder, you're going to need some film. So I've got some film here. So this is a box of medium format 4x5 film. So it comes in a box like this, which does have a light tight seal inside. So don't go opening this box in broad daylight, otherwise you're going to have a really bad day because it'll all expose. So make sure you do this in complete darkness or get a changing bag to change it out in the field. So this is to put into your holders in the back of the camera here. If you went with medium format film, then obviously any of your kind of 120 film will be perfectly okay. So really the options are endless. They are, well actually, they're getting smaller and smaller. There are some film stocks being brought back, but you've got plenty of options when it comes to film. So make sure, you experiment and see what works for you. Okay, so another important accessory to look at when buying a large format camera is one of these. It's a simple cable release. This just screws into the side of the camera here, and it allows you to trigger the shutter without touching the camera at all, because one small touch of the camera could end up shaking it and blurring your photos, which is the last thing you want. So by cocking the shutter on the top here and using this, you can release the camera without having to touch the camera at all and cause any undue shake. So for the cost of these, you can buy heaps of these second hand. I've got about 5 or 6 of them. And make sure you get a reliable one, because the last thing you want is to be setting up a long exposure, taking the shot, kind of tying it off so the shutter stays open, and then realizing an hour or two later, if you're doing ultra long exposures, that this has come loose and your exposure finished early. So make sure you get one that you can trust and doesn't get jammed and is kind of working well if you're going to buy second hand. Alrighty, so something else you're going to need is a big enough bag. I'm currently using the Peak Design 45 litre bag. It just ensures I've got enough space, the camera gear is well protected, and there's compartments for all of my accessories. And you would have seen in my last videos, and even today, I'm carrying a second bag, and that one is just to carry my vlogging gear in. So that's the Brevity jumper bag, yeah, so I just put all of my, my XH2S and a couple of lenses to kind of vlog with, just because they won't all fit in here. So if you're not vlogging, the one bag should do it, depending on how many lenses you decide to purchase. Here's my bag there. Got the medium pouch here. It's supposed to be in there. So my 4.5 camera fits perfectly into here. Spot meter. My lens goes in here. Film in the front here. And then my other alternate backs, like the 6x12, fits in perfectly there. I've also got a filter holder in the front here, my loop, and then my Peak Design accessory bag there as well. So that fits in extremely well. And then the dark cloth just sits on top of that, or just in the front of my bag. So a really nice setup for a small large format setup. Alrighty, well I really hope that this has helped give you an insight into what gear you might need to start on your large photography journey, be it 4.5, 8.10, or using medium format adapters on the back of it. If you do have any questions about any of this gear, what I'm using, why I used it, just pop a comment down in the description, and I will be doing more videos in this series about the different types of large format cameras, different lenses, and just some different tutorials about large format photography and medium format photography, digital and 35mm as well, but just at the moment focusing on large format. So if you want to come on that journey with me, please like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much.